Hey everybody, welcome to Clean and Sober Stoner. Today I have a living legend. You don't like hearing that though, do you?
No.
You are. You're absolutely a living legend. 30
If you
years.
say so, sure.
30 years ahead of your time. This is Patrick from the classic band Volume. So, say hi.
Hi, how's it going? Thanks for listening.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember when you reached out to me initially, I'm like, Volume. How do I know that name? How do I know? And then I remembered, I think the old Stoner Rock forum was still going on.
Yeah, that was the main source of finding out new bands, hearing about old bands. That was it.
That was it. Do you remember at all why that forum went away?
No, I don't. That forum went away after I took a hiatus with Volume. I kept in touch for a little bit on what was going on, but then it just kind of, I think it just became more of a time suck for the people and not enough, payment on it, so to speak. I think, they were using it because all that's heavy was also distribution for records and stuff. And I think that it was just too much, for too little getting back from it, I think. I don't know.
I remember some of the members of the forum were getting they were doing shit posting. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I stopped going on there because it got a little negative.
Yeah. Well, in the late 90s when it really started taking off, didn't have any of that stuff. And by the time I wasn't like checking it out, there wasn't really that much negative stuff going on. It was pretty still chill. So
Yeah, stoner community is usually pretty chill, but then you get these guys with the rowdy punk and hardcore influence, and it just goes to hell.
yeah, no, that always sucks. Right. Yeah, I got some of that hardcore influence. So
Like I said, I remember it was a big deal because you got a certain person as the drummer on. It was the last. Was it an EP or a full album?
it was an EP. It was Reader on what's coming out. We're reissuing that. That's the album that's coming out, remastered and everything, coming out on October 27th.
Right on. You don't mean Scott Reeder, do you?
Yeah, which Scott Reeder? We got, it's fun. It's Scott Reeder from Fu Manchu, the drummer. But when we first put it out, people were like, wow, the bass player plays drums. I didn't know, because a lot of people didn't know of Scott Reeder, the drummer. He'd been in a band called Smile, and they had some, success on some radio play with a song that they had. They were on a major label, and they had a song called Staring at the Sun. And so some people recognized that. But other than that, the only Scott Reeder people knew was Kaya Scott Reeder. So they're like, wow, he played drums on your album. Wow. So that was kind of funny.
So they're two different people.
Yeah, you got Scott Reeder from Caius, the bass player from Obsessed, and some different other bands. And then you have Scott Reeder from Smile and Fu Manchu.
Okay, I think we can wrap up the interview. We just cleared everything up.
Yeah, everybody wanted to know.
I'm sure there's like about a few thousand people that were confused on that.
Yeah.
So why don't you give us a little bit of background in case people don't know? Tell us a little bit about the history of Volume and ultimately what happened. Why did you guys just kind of disappear on us?
Yeah, Volume. I started Volume back in '93 after being in certain bands and just different headbutting, different directions bands wanted to go. And I usually, up until that point, I just sang in bands and I played a little guitar. And I was just like, you know what? I know the direction I want to go. I know what style I want to do. I'm going to work on writing good songs and then just go from there. And so I met somebody in '93 when I was going to a community college. And we started jamming. He was a bass player, played guitar. We got a drummer. We were playing shows by like '95. We put out a demo in '97. And then '98, we put out a 7-inch single, which got some really killer reviews and started getting us noticed. And a few labels started hitting us up. And we got on a bunch of comps. And then we finally got signed to High Beam Records out of Australia, and there's a couple other labels like People Like You Records, which actually got sucked up by Century Media not too long ago. But there's a few labels that were looking at us, but everybody wanted to put out CDs at that time, and we wanted to put out vinyl. And High Beam, Jeb from High Beam said, hey, we'll put out this on vinyl and CD. And I was like, okay, that's a no-brainer. That's the company I want to go with. But the problem was they ended up folding before the vinyl came out. And so that's why when we ended up taking a hiatus, which that came about, we broke up we were touring the United States. We played the Missions Fest and different things. And, just the cliche band issues happened on the road and broke up. I was putting back, getting some more members for the band, and, perspectives and responsibilities kind of switched, and I just focused on the family for the next 20 years. But now that the kids are grown, it's time to get back and finish what I started. And one of the things I wanted to do was get this thing on vinyl. So I put some feelers out, and some labels contacted me, and Eclectic were the ones that said they can get it out this year. And I was like, okay, that's what I want, because it's just a stepping stone to get back and finish a lot of the stuff that I wanted to accomplish. So that record's coming out on October 27th on vinyl.
And then you have a rather kind of noteworthy dude who's remastering that for you, don't you?
Yeah, Jack Endino. And I hit him back up years ago before we were supposed to come back from tour, and he was going to produce our next album, like a full-length album. And he was totally into our band. He heard about us through a management company, and our management company got us a hold of him. They told me, they're like, hey, Jack Endino, we're friends with him. He digs your stuff. So we hit him up, and he's like, yeah, I like your stuff. I would love to produce you guys. And that didn't happen because we broke up, and things shifted in perspective and responsibilities. But so when we had this opportunity to put the record out on vinyl, I shot him an email, and he's like, oh yeah, I remember your band, I still have your CD, and which was, I was totally floored by that. I was like, wow, he still has it, he remembers us 20 years later, because I didn't have any clue, like, if he would even remember who we were. And he's like, oh yeah. And so he remastered it, and he did a killer job. It sounds a lot more crisp. It still has that raw edge to it, but he cleaned up some lower end noise that was there that was keeping you from really hearing the bass. Now the bass you can actually hear, and it's a lot more distinct. Yeah, so it still sounds that garage rock, late 60s, early 70s sound, but it's a little more clean.
Yeah, and I think that's where you guys were many years ahead, because now that kind of sound, it sells. You've got bands from Sweden, bands from Austria, bands from South America that have that real garagey, psych, almost proto-metal sound with a little bit of punk. What I've always kind of never understood is, where did that come from with you guys? Because nobody else is doing it.
Well, that comes from just the stuff I listened to. A lot of the stuff in the 80s, I was into like Black Flag, which actually they got me into a lot of SST bands, which were really like eclectic, and different bands like Worm and DC3, and they were heavily influenced by a lot of the 70s stuff. Worm was actually had a record out in the 70s, but like DC3, SWA, and different bands like that got me to go back and listen to the Stooges, which I loved, and MC5, and so just having those influences, and some of the late 80s influences were like Mudhoney. They have that garage, Stooges sound. Then the Hypnotics, they're full on, their early stuff was Stooges, Love Affair. They were killer. I love that band. So a lot of like the Hypnotics, Mudhoney, Loop, a lot of that kind of just really raw, in your face, garage psych, rockin' stuff is where I draw a lot of influence.
So do you think we're finally ready for what Volume has to show us?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm hoping so. There seems to be a good response so far when people check it out and stuff. One thing is there's a few bands out there that are kind of like in the same style, and they seem to be, people are digging them, so that's cool. But for the most part, the stoner rock scene is so much broader than it was in the 90s. I was just talking to someone the other day. There's a lot of different genres being implemented into stoner rock, which is really cool. But our sound, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of bands doing what we're doing, and so I don't know exactly how that's gonna, ultimately play out. But in the end, I'm just gonna put out what I write and love, and so.
Well, I know there's a lot of buzz about it. I think J.J. Koczan from the Obelisk also did a full article about this upcoming release.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I was surprised, and I was happy about that. So that was really cool. He's, a lot of people go to his website and check it out. So I was really happy about that.
Yeah, there's a good amount of buzz for it. I remember one of the you did a cover of the Misfits. I think it was "Die Die My Darling."
Yes.
God, that's a fun cover, and I actually like it a lot more than the I'm not a big Misfits guy. I don't know why. I think Danzig just kind of rubs me wrong in general.
Okay. Yeah. No, I get it. He rubs a lot of people wrong, but I don't think you could go wrong with the Misfits. I think they're one of my favorite bands. I still love them. Like my first car that I ever got was a 66 Valiant Slant 6. I had the crazy idea that I made a Misfits shirt, and with their skull, and I was gonna paint the whole car with this thing, but it was in two parts, and I had to tape it to my car, spray paint it, move it. So needless to say, the task of doing the whole car was like way too much. I got a fender done with all these Misfit skulls, and I stopped. So my car was painted with all sorts of crazy stuff on there, but I didn't end up finishing with the Misfits. But we loved them. So when we were asked to do a cover tune for a compilation, I was like, yeah, I'm on it. Let's go. And we knocked it out. Like most of the stuff, we practiced a few times, and then we throw in kind of some volume riffs on there, extra stuff, just to kind of keep the song a little bit of our own, take what they did and not change it up too much, but just throw in like something that's volume, so that when somebody hears it, they're like, yeah, I can see this even being a volume song if they've never heard of the Misfits.
So one of the things I remember, and unfortunately for the people out there, we can't really get the album right now, right?
No, you can't get the album. Colossal Freak, the remastered version, is coming out. I don't know when this interview will be online, but it comes out on Wednesday, June 14th. So the remastered version of Colossal Freak, and then we're going to drop another single in August, and maybe one more in the very beginning of October. But you'll be able to get the remastered version in October. And if you look really hard, you can find the old version on a couple places on YouTube. But we really want people to check this out. So, hopefully they'll be looking for this when it comes out.
Well, I do have a copy of it, and I've listened to it a few times. It sounds to me, and I know I'm describing music to people who can't hear it, but by the time this comes out, we'll have it. It sounded to me like you just took a few microphones, put it into a room, and hit play. Was that recorded live, or at least in segments live?
Well, the whole how we like to record is get that live sound. So yeah, we did a lot of the basic tracks were recorded all together with mics in the room, over the drums, on our amps, and then we went back and did a few overdubs. But that was pretty much it, to get that energy, that rawness there. And I think that's what we try to do live, and we wanted to capture that.
I really wish more bands would just record live. I'm not going to name anybody, but I've seen about 8 bands lately. They actually sound better live than they do on the recording.
Yeah,
I
that
think
happens a lot.
there's something about the recording process that just sucks the life out of the music. And I think that's unfortunate. So my question is there new volume material that's going to be sprung on the world yet anytime soon?
I don't know how soon. We're hoping to get back in the studio in October. And the goal is to put out a record a year for the next 3 years and then see from there. But we're wanting to put out an EP by next summer so we can tour behind that. I've got a ton of material, figuring over the last 20 years, even though I took a hiatus from Volume, I never stopped playing guitar, constant writing riffs. I just wrote a song the other day. I got new stuff. So I want to get some of the older stuff out that was never recorded, along with some new stuff too, kind of mix it up. Hopefully, if things go well, we get some label interest and them wanting to put out the EP for next summer. If not, we're going to put it out ourselves.
Outstanding. So you have a lineup already? Do you have some people in the band?
I have a bass player, and which is funny. Yesterday, I just tried out a drummer, and it looks pretty good. He laid it down pretty good, and we're in top back together and jamming, and so that's pretty much the furthest we've gotten with the drummer, because a lot of the good drummers, they're already in bands, or they're in 5 bands, you know what I mean? So
I do, yeah.
Really, it's really hard to find a good drummer, and I'm not going to settle. I've said it 1,000 times that the drums can make or break a song. They can make it sound weak, or they can take it to the next level, and that's what we want. We want a drummer that can really just lay it down. There's something we have to live up to. It was great having Scott Reeder, who's a killer drummer, but now it's like we can't go backwards. We got to get somebody at least as good, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe a little younger?
Yeah. We'll see. We're all a little bit older nowadays, but which is cool. People are still putting out records. I mean, Dave Windorf, he's 66 or 67 and still putting out records. Labels are still wanting to put out his stuff, and that's cool.
That reminds me, bringing up Dave, you were really strongly compared to Monster Magnet back when you guys were just, I think one reviewer said it was like a psychedelic slugfest. And
Okay.
just throw the Monster Magnet away.
Yeah, that was Ralph from Daredevil magazine. It was an online magazine back in the day, in their little record company. He said he's pretty much he was saying something to the effect that he hears a lot of people reference us to Monster Magnet, but he said throw your Spine of God in the trash and put Volume in your CD. That always stuck with me, because I was like, anytime you get compared to Monster Magnet, which is one of my favorite bands, that's I'll take it, you know what I mean? So,
by the way, if anything, I think everybody listening, if they haven't heard Spine of God, they need to rush out and grab that sucker. It's a great album.
They can't say they're into stoner rock if they haven't listened to Spine of God. That's, because, that's the epitome. I think that takes all of the best elements of stoner rock, punk rock, psychedelic, just everything, and then puts it in a killer package with killer lyrics, and I think that's the ultimate stoner rock album.
You know what? I'm going to have to dig that sucker. I haven't listened to it in a while. Maybe do a classic album review on my blog.
That would actually be kind of cool if you did something like that, because a lot of people, the newer kids coming up, I'm sure they listen to a lot of the old stuff, but a lot of them don't and haven't really listened to these classic albums like Spine of God, And so I think that would kind of be a cool little thing to put out there.
Now, I've talked to you a few times, and there's one thing killing me. What is that guitar cabinet that's right behind you?
Oh, the cabinets are like a no-name cabinet, but I ended up selling my cabinet way back in the day after, because I was like, I'm not needing it anytime soon. I got a Showman. I love the Showman. It's a 68, and so I love the clean channel on it. and when you crank it up, it sounds like it's about to break up, but it still has a clean sound. It's a little dirty. I think it's great because then I just use the distortion pedals to get that really heavy fuzz sound.
Now, you brought up the pedals. What kind of, so in your signal chain, what do you usually have going on?
The typical, the flange, the chorus, a small stone. I have, it's like a phaser. I have a big muff, and the crybaby wah. I love the wah. You'll notice in a lot of the songs, heavy on the wah, and that influence really came from St. Vitus. And when I was first trying to get my guitar tone, I was heavily influenced, like I said, by SST bands. And St. Vitus, I'd never heard anything like that. I was like, man, that sounds dark. It sounds heavy.
Right.
And so when I was first messing with the guitar sound, when Volume was, I was messing with that open wah sound that they have a lot and stuff. But I eventually changed it. But there was a heavy influence on like just he uses the wah a lot, and it's just got this little like a bad acid trip kind of going on sound. You know? Yeah,
a bad acid trip after 3 days of a meth run.
Yeah. Got to stay away from that stuff though.
So you're located. Are you still in the 29 Palms area?
Yeah, exactly. I was born and raised here.
That'll be the easiest thing I've ever had happen. So we briefly lost you. We were talking about, is there any sort of scene going on? Because 29 Palms is pretty desolate, right?
Yeah, but there's, like I was saying, back in the 80s and 90s, because you were mentioning, the scene, and it was pretty separated. Like, I went down to some of the shows down in the 80s, but most of it was like, what we did was, we had our thing up here, all the other lower desert people, Palm Springs and all that, they had their scene going on. And this has always been super eclectic up here. We have, folk rock, we have metal, we have, stoner rock. There's a bunch of stuff, but what's crazy is a lot of these bands in the desert scene from the lower desert, they have houses up here now. So it's kind of started meshing together. So, Brant Bjork, I think he was living up here for a while. Mario Lowley puts on shows up here. There's a lot of places actually to play up here. Like, there's shows going on almost every night up in between Yucca Valley, Joshua Tree, and 29 Palms. That's
amazing. Do you know those guys at all? Have you met them at least?
I've talked to them at shows, but it's always weird going up, sound like a fanboy, like, hey, so I've chit-chatted with them. We're not like buddies or anything like that and stuff, but... I
don't know, man. I hear good things about that kid, Brant Bjork. He might be a decent drummer.
Yeah, I wish, yeah. I wish I had a number I could call him up. Yeah, he rocks, for sure. That would kind of be funny, though. Brant Bjork, Reader, everybody from Fu Manchu. Yeah, so the scene up here is actually cool. They got tons of record labels. Everybody's heard of, recording studios. Everybody's heard of Rancho de la Luna, the Desert Sessions, all of that. They have that here. That was one of the first recording studios up here, but now there's probably at least 10, if not more, up here, and people come up here to record all the time.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like Foo Fighters have recorded here, Arctic Monkeys, all sorts of different people. People from the Dinosaur Jr. It's crazy up here. There's a thriving scene, but it's very eclectic.
That is awesome. And to think the whole thing kind of started with a couple generators out in the middle of the desert down around the Palm Springs folk.
Yeah, I actually threw one. Like I was saying, I kind of went down there a few times, but back in '91. I threw a generator party at the Nude Bowl, and that was the time I was actually in Fu Manchu singing. We played that with like 4 other bands. The guys from Hiatus were there. I met them there. There's probably like 500 people at that show. It was crazy, but what was crazy about that? I put on the show. I got the kegs. I got the sound system, the lights. Everything, thought of everything, got the bands, everything was going good, and the last band that was playing, 3 songs into it, I'm talking to the guys from Hiatus, and all of a sudden I hear brrr, and I'm like, I forgot gas.
I'm sorry.
Oh man, I was like, the band was pissed. I was looking around asking if anybody had a hose so we could siphon gas from cars. Nobody had that. That was the one thing I thought of everything but bringing extra gas, and the generators died. And this band came from LA, which is 2 hours away, to play, and they got in 3 songs, and that was it. So that was
Dude,
crazy.
I know you hate being called a legend. I know this. And I know you're really humble and really modest, but damn your stories and the things you've seen, the people you've known. I think it's about time for your story to take precedence. So I'm really looking forward to this re-release. Do you absolutely promise to let me know when, as soon as there's even a half of a single of a new volume song drops, will you let me know?
I'll definitely send you. I